Hō-On Sesshin第74則幕妄想は紛争無合国しおよそ真もなればたら幕妄想と曰く Entangling Vines Case 74 Drop Deluded Thought Whenever Funshu Mugo was asked a question, he would simply say, drop deluded thought. Good now, whatever now may be, whatever we may call now, here or there, in the various places that our physical bodies think they are. Yet, the most wonderful thing about it is here and now we meet. Here and now togetherness. Not a tenth of an inch of difference. Just this shared together. The title of this session is Hō-On Sesshin, to requite the beneficence that we have received. And of course, as a container, or let's say, as the circumstances or the parameters in which this sesshin occurs here at Rinzai-ji Zen Center and all over the world, is the particular condition that we call Rinzai-ji, the particular tradition that we call Rinzai Zen, and the particular condition that many of us have arrived here through having studied with Denkyō-shitsu Kyōzan Jōshū, who passed away just about 10 years ago. But of course, this Jōshū was the tip of the spear, the tip of the arrow of time that flies so quickly, just as we chanted in the Kozen Daitu Kokushyuikai, Koin Yano Gotoshi. Time flies like an arrow. And sitting at that very tip of the arrow, while alive, was Jōshū. But before him, we had Joten Soko Zenzu Daiyosho, Banryu Zenso Daiyosho, the grandfather teacher of Jōshū, Dokuon Roshi, before that, and many generations going back to Inzan, Ien, before that Hakuin, Ekaku Zenzu, before that Kirochigo, who came to Japan, before that Bodhidharma, and so on. So our Hō-On Suru, or Hō-On of requiting the beneficence, is requiting the beneficence of all this that has led us to this very moment here, of being alive, of having consciousness, and of having the ability to develop the capacity to embrace this in its fullness. in its fullness of everything that has led to this very moment of unfolding. So really, our practice is a daily practice, a practice in every second in which we are called to be fully present, and to exercise our ability to be present in the way that the circumstances, the conditions call for. If there's any difficulty with religion overall, or with idealism, or any kind of system of philosophy or thinking, then that difficulty probably lies in the fact that there's the tendency of the human mind to gravitate to one side of this dualism. The big conundrum of theistic religion often is that there is the good God, and yet Satan, evil, the dark side is also there. This teaching of the Buddha, this teaching of Nyoko no Nyorai Zen or Nyorai Nyoko Zen, of Tathagata Zen as formulated by Jōshū Roshi, again, even though talking about this duality, because our minds are able to approach it that way a little closer, but even that teaching speaks about this one true nature, true love, or zero. So how do we live in this kind of a world that appears to be cut into two is the big question that we are investigating on the cushion. And it ought to be the big question that we investigate and not only then realize, but also actualize as a response to it in our daily lives. Daily lives, nightly lives, every moment. That then is the true activity of requiting the beneficence of being here. We think back in history, and of course, everything that has left traces is called history. That's how we remember things. And sometimes we remember the things that were beneficial. And humanity has a wonderful record of ingenuity, but also of teaching, the Buddha's teaching, and so many, many different ways that talk about this one non-dual that encompasses everything. But of course, since we are in a duality with our minds in this world of the 10,000 things, well, there are also dark moments that are seared into history. And that equally, and this is the difficult part for many to really embrace, is that really brought us to this moment, this very moment. And all of it is included. Just a couple of weeks ago, we celebrated the 48th anniversary of the official opening of International Daibosatsu Zendo Kongoji in the Catskill Mountains. And since 2013, part of that Sesshin is a ceremony of atonement. When it first started, there was a very specific reason to have that ceremony of atonement as an expression of the recognition of the complicated past of that institution that runs that monastery. But over time, of course, that narrow focus, by gaining more and more clarity, has widened, and widened. While it is important to look at the very spot our feet are touching on this earth and how we have come here, it is also important to look at the really wide angle of a 360-degree focus and recognition of all the difficulties that come with being a human being, with society, with culture, and all aspects of it. This has been a struggle for humanity, a struggle of the ages, let me say. It is not something that just started recently. We might experience it with various emotional reactions when we are called to recognize this. Of course, we are the ones now at that tip of the arrow of time. And there we sit, there we fly, and what we do truly matters. This is the moment where Dharma unfolds. This is the moment where karma unfolds and may be created, where conditions may be attended to or changed. So, humanity does not have a great record, a great track record overall. Sitting here in this modern society, when we look back in history, and there's no difference if this is East Asian history, if this is American history, if this is European history, a lot of the freedoms we enjoy nowadays, a lot of the privileges that we enjoy nowadays are based upon horrible acts of discrimination, of even killing, of warfare, and religious warfare being the worst of all of that. Religious warfare, ideological warfare, no difference. Trying to make oneself feel better by draping some kind of cloak of legitimacy, may it be moral, may it be religious, may it be philosophical, or whatever it is just a dressing up of those seeds of greed, anger, and delusion to which we are called to attend by requiting that beneficence. I don't think I have to go into any details, but what I can say from my own experience, the first reaction when realizing this or when being confronted with something like this is, I was not involved. I would have done it differently. And painfully over time, we realize that by that kind of a reaction and action, in fact, our passivity or our not seeing that ultimately we are responsible for the actions of all human beings. If we don't really get to that understanding and are able to embrace it, then this, well, I didn't do it. That was a different generation. That was a different person. That was a different time, and so on, is nothing else but an excuse. And if we dress that in a spiritual garment, it might look much better, but it is nothing else than spiritual bypassing, using something else to justify to legitimize our own, what I would call premeditated ignorance. Oh, don't tell me about that. I don't want to hear it, is an act of premeditated ignorance. Yet, Hō-On, giving back and requiting the beneficence of being here, does not encourage us to do that. Every deep practice in religious systems, in philosophical systems, in ethical systems, or even in agnosticism, there's no difference as long as we fully step up to recognizing and embracing all that is presented here. Being complete and wanting to be complete is what often is described as the entropy that brought humanity to develop these systems of thought, systems of practice, systems of belief. If we didn't feel incomplete, why would we do all of this? So that completeness, if it is just a completeness that thinks there is a clean part that ought to be owned, and the rest goes into the garbage can, that is a system and a way of living that is fully based in this dualist world. Dualistic this and that. In the first talk that I had the privilege to give during this Hō-On Sesshin, I quoted Shinjin-mei on believing in mind or faith in mind. Sosan Kanchi Zenji. The highest path is not difficult, just beyond picking and choosing, which means it's just beyond that dualistic world where everything is cut between opposites. So, you might be asking, what is he talking about? That has nothing to do with that koan here. Let's get to the koan. Come on. Shut up now. I've heard enough of that. Fine. So be it. Here in case 74 of the Shumon Kattō-shū, again, I'm very happy that it's such a wonderful koan to fit the very moment when it appears, like every koan is. It's short and sweet. Whenever Funshu Mugo was asked a question, he would simply say, drop deluded thought. A very basic instruction. Now, following our traditional way of recognizing the person who appears here, and let us learn a little bit about Funshu Mugo. Funshu Mugo lived from 760 to 821 in the Common Era, and he only appears in this one case of the Shumon Kattō-shū. I am not aware of any other cases that he appears in the other collections, at least in the big ones like the Mumonkan, the Gateless Gate, the Hikigan-roku, the Blue Cliff Record, and so on. But he was a native of Shangshu, which is in the modern Shaanxi province. His family name was Du. He started studying the sutras at age 9. So very, very early. The Mahayana Sutras at the temple that in Japanese is pronounced Kaigenji. It is said that he could memorize the sutras, the texts, 5 lines at a time after reading them once. He received ordination at the age of 12 and the full precepts of the Mahayana at the age of 20. So that would have been in 780. He was very well versed in the Vinaya, which is the monastic rules that were studied at that time in China very intensely. And he became known as a lecturer on the Mahaparinirvana Sutra, which we also mentioned in the first of the talks at this Hō-On Sesshin. Remember the Gata Attadipa Viharata. You are the light. Look within. That's from the Mahaparinirvana Sutra. So one day he heard about a great teacher who was around. And many of us were really lucky to hear about a great teacher who was around. In this case, he heard about Baso Doitsu. Mugo picked up his bundle and went to visit Baso. Mugo must have been a quite imposing figure. I suppose he was tall and very well and strong built. So when he arrived at Baso's place, Baso recognized and noted Mugo's imposing appearance and voice. And he looked at him and he said to Mugo, "Oh, you have an impressive Buddha hall, but no Buddha inside." Which, of course, we could call a dig. How imposing you are here, but it's all empty inside. Mugo, not offended, knelt down and said, "Master, I have studied and understood the teaching of the three vehicles, but I have not yet understood the Zen teaching that mind, just as it is Buddha." Baso replied, "It is the very mind that has not yet understood. There is nothing else." Mugo went on to question, "What is the secretly transmitted mind seal that the ancestor brought from the West?" He's talking about Bodhidharma. Baso replied, "Virtuous monk, you're becoming annoying. Go now and come back some other time." As Mugo bowed and stepped out, Baso called, "Reverend!" When Mugo turned around and looked at Baso, Baso said, "What is that?" Finally, Mugo understood and bowed to Baso, to which Baso continued, "Look at this stupid oaf. What's all the bowing about?" That's one of the stories about Mugo and his being trained by Baso Doitsu. Later, Mugo continued his pilgrimages and he went to Mount Tendai, which is the place where the memorial tower of the sixth ancestor is. And he also visited a lot of other places of the Chan history. He continued to study the Tripitaka and finally settled down again at Kaigenji in Nishikaba, where he taught for 20 years. As it is so often in the stories about these ancient Zen teachers, he was invited by the emperor to come and preside over one of the imperial temples. But, of course, he didn't want to do that, and he always conveniently got sick when it came to the time to go. But finally, finally, he agreed on following the call of the emperor. And he took a bath before departing. He shaved his head and called his disciples before his departure and said the following: "This nature of yours that sees, that hears, that perceives and knows is the same age as empty space, and is neither born nor annihilated. All states are originally void, and there is not a single thing to be obtained. The deluded do not understand this and are deceived by phenomena, thus undergoing rebirth endlessly. Know that mind nature is from the very beginning. It is not produced. And like a diamond, it cannot be destroyed. All phenomena are like shadows and echoes, lacking in essence. Thus, the Avatamsaka Sutra says, only this one is true. The other two are not. If you are always aware that everything is void, then there is nothing to engage. This is the way the Buddhas use their minds. Always practice this." The master then died in the sitting position. He never made it to the imperial temple. Still, he was given the honorary title of national teacher Dada, Dada Daishi, great achievement national teacher. This is Funsho Mugo. Very clear and straightforward, he spoke to his disciples about emptiness, about not two, about non-duality. Always practice this, was his admonition, his final admonition. Kozen Daito, Shuho Myocho, Zenzu Daiyosho, whose last admonition we chanted ends with Ben-sen, Ben-sen. Work hard, not different from always practice this. So what is this? What is this? What is this drop deluded thought? What is that? Let's take a quick detour and look at Mumonkan case 23, the gateless gate, case 23, which also has to do with the sixth ancestor, whose memorial tower Mugo went to visit on Mount Tendai. So case 23 of the gateless gate goes like this. The sixth ancestor was pursued by the monk Myo as far as Taiyu Mountain. This monk Myo, let me tell you, used to be a soldier. And why did he pursue the sixth ancestor? Because at the monastery of the fifth ancestor, transmission to this illiterate sixth ancestor was given in secret. The fifth ancestor gave the bowl and the robe to his successor and had him sneak out at night because he was afraid that the establishment of the other monks would not accept it. And so the story was the next morning that he ran away and he needs to be pursued because, of course, he has stolen the true teaching and the robe and the bowl and does not deserve it. And Myo happened to be a former soldier, a general, and was very good at tracing the escapee, or so thought of escapee. So here the ancestors, seeing Myo coming, laid the robe and bowl on a rock and said, "This robe represents the faith. It should not be fought over. If you want to take it away, take it now." Myo tried to pick it up, but it was as heavy as a mountain and would not budge. Faltering and trembling, he cried out, "I came for the Dharma, not for the robe. I beg you, please give me your instruction." The sixth ancestor said, "Think neither good nor evil. At this very moment, what is the original self of the monk Myo? At this, Myo was directly illuminated. His whole body was covered with sweat. He wept and bowed, saying, "Besides the secret words and the secret meaning you have just now revealed to me, is there anything else deeper still?" The ancestor said, "What I have told you is no secret at all. When you look into your own true self, whatever is deeper is found right there." Myo said, "I was with the monks under Obai for many years, but could not realize my true self. But now, receiving your instruction, I know it is like a man drinking water and knowing whether it is cold or warm. My lay brother, you are now my teacher." The ancestor Daikaneno said, "If you say so, but let us both call Obai our teacher. Be mindful to treasure and hold fast to what you have attained." He put down the robe on a rock. And when he did that, Daikaneno Zenji, he said, "This robe represents the faith. It should not be fought over. If you want to take it away, take it now." Putting down the teachings of our departed teachers, putting down what we learned in that way, we should be called to the same understanding. This is not to be fought over. And in the instruction that the sixth ancestor gives, think neither good nor evil. At this very moment, what is the original self of the person listening to these words? Honrai no Memmoku. The true, the original face. And not only that, what we are being taught here is no secret at all. There is nothing secretive here. But we have to look deeply in ourselves, deeper and deeper, so that we really can embody that and feel it in our bones, in our muscles. And if we have hair, which I don't have, in each hair, that is so important. And when he says, be mindful to treasure and hold fast to what you have attained, it means the same thing. Stay with this Hō-On Suru, with this requiting the beneficence in everything you do. Not thinking about good or evil means not being caught in the duality of opposing terms, concepts, ideas, and so on. Let me give you one more example of this expression of how non-duality is so important. This is from the Blue Cliff record, the Hekigan-roku, case 3. And it is about Baso Doitsu, who also appears and figures very deeply into the development of Funshu Mugo Zenzu. And here's case 3. The great Master Baso was seriously ill. The chief priest of the temple came to pay his respects. He asked, Master, how do you feel these days? The master said, sun-faced Buddha, moon-faced Buddha. Nichimen Butsu, Gachimen Butsu. Baso was sick. One day he was better. Another day he was not as well. Some days the sun shines, or sometimes, as expressed by Baso Doitsu, the sun-faced Buddha is manifest, here and now. And just that, sun-faced Buddha. At other times, the moon-faced Buddha, in darkness, but just the moon-faced Buddha. This is Buddha. Whatever we prepend, however we might embellish it by ideas that were abstracted by our reactions to this very moment of reality, that is the place where duality comes into existence. This is 1/10 of an inch's difference between Buddha, sun-faced Buddha, moon-faced Buddha, thinking evil, thinking good. That is where that distance comes into existence that Joshu Roshi spoke about so often. And when we get to sit zazen or experience any kind of time without self-referential consciousness, there is this one true nature that has no adjectives added to it. That is just as it is, just so. Suchness. Tattata, dharmata, or shinyo, as it is called in Japanese. Not true. So when our friend and ancestor Funshu Mugo was asked a question, whenever he saw the sword of dialectic thinking, of dualistic thinking, of cognition in a divided context arise, he would simply say, drop deluded thought. Now, of course, we have to be careful here. It doesn't mean don't think at all. Deluded thought is thought that is based upon abstractions. Abstractions are very, very important when it comes to describing this world, when it comes to engineering, to science, to making sure we build houses in a way that they don't collapse. When it comes to all kinds of practical things. But what is really important here is to recognize that that abstraction and duality between self and other is used in a context that has a full return to that what is before the abstraction. Upaya is a skillful means that has to return to that oneness. Sitting at Rinzai-ji in the space that through abstraction was built, but in reality is still standing without the need of any further such abstraction or dualistic thinking, is that manifestation of skillful means. So it's not that we are being told here, don't think at all. But be careful that you don't get stuck in the thinking and start believing that that layer of abstraction is what this is about, or what this is. It is only about. But this is non-dual, not two. It's very important, especially when it comes to making relationship with other human beings. Because if you don't abstract them, there are no others. There is no separation. There is this one great heart of the cosmos, that one great heart of true love, in which no such distinction exists. To come back to the opening of this talk. So when we reflect on the history, when we reflect of all the events that have brought us to this very event of this moment, when it comes to ask ourselves, what is the most important thing to do? And that is to realize that in non-duality, in Sangha, in society, the most important thing is that we are all one. When we get caught up in us and them, then the trouble begins. If we call one group Israelis, the other group Palestinians, the trouble has started. If we are able to grow a heart that is big enough to embrace all of it, and they are all human beings who have a need to be recognized, who have a need to be embraced beyond any added attributes that come from that world of separation, then we can go forth and make steps into that direction that will help us resolve difficulties based upon these arbitrary distinctions of identity. Especially as Buddhist practitioners, as Zen practitioners, Muga, the no self, means that we have to give up our attachment of wanting to be defined by this or that abstraction, and just go ahead and develop the ability to embrace all that has led us to this very moment. And then to not just recognize our responsibility, but to take the next step and actualize the opening to that one great heart by being able to see all that exists is myself. As soon as that other disappears, no more question about what to do, how to practice, and how to requite this beneficence. I want to give my sincere thanks to Rinzai-ji, not only for being there, but for having indulged in the delusion that I have to add anything. But it is my privilege to be here to requite the beneficence and thank Jōshū Roshi and the whole tradition, thank all the living bodhisattvas who appear on screen and in the Zendo here, and to just say, we have to do this together as one. And if we do it together as one, there is no word to describe what that is. So, thank you very much.